inside a 400-tray-a-week microgreens farm, a complete behind-the-scenes tour. Welcome to the farm of green profit garden tucked into a modest patch of land. This small but mighty operation produces roughly 400 trays of microgreens every single week. The greens grown here make their way to about 50 restaurants, a couple of large wholesale accounts, one bustling farmers market, and a handful of small retail shops. What makes this operation particularly remarkable is the size of the team behind it. Just two people, the farm's founder and a single farm manager, run the entire show from seed to sale. This is Piedmont Microgreens, and this article walks through a full, detailed tour of the farm. How trays are prepped, how seeds are stored and measured, how planting happens, how crops germinate and grow, and how everything eventually gets harvested, packed, and delivered to customers across the region. Meet the farmer. The person behind this operation wears two hats. First, he is the founder of Piedmont Microgreens, the working farm featured in this tour. Second, he is the co-founder of Microgreen Manager, a crop planning and order management platform built alongside his brother. Microgreen Manager has become one of the leading software tools used by microgreen growers around the world to manage the logistics of production. From tracking what needs to be planted on a given day to knowing exactly when a tray is ready to come out of germination. For a while, the farm's public content mostly consisted of short-form videos and reels covering bits of the software and glimpses of daily farm life. But there's now a push toward longer, more detailed videos and write-ups like this one, content meant to show the real, unfiltered realities of running a microgreens operation at scale. That includes the successes, but also the mistakes, the wasted money, and the lessons learned the hard way. The goal of this deeper content is straightforward: to help other growers scale their own farms with fewer costly missteps. While this particular walkthrough is a broad overview of the whole operation, future pieces will dig into the individual steps of the grow cycle in much greater detail. Tray prep, planting technique, germination management, grow-out, harvest methods, tray cleaning, not comped, and the delivery process that gets these greens from farm to table. Starting with trays, every microgreens farm begins in the same place, the humble tray. This farm uses standard 10-20 style trays, and despite operating at a meaningful commercial scale, all watering here is still done by hand rather than through automated irrigation systems. The tray system itself is simple but effective. Two trays are used together: a top tray with drainage holes, which holds the growing medium and the crop, and a solid bottom tray underneath it that catches excess water. The two nest together perfectly, creating a self-contained growing unit. At any given time, there's a supply of trays that have been used, cleaned, and sanitized, sitting ready for the next round of filling. Keeping a buffer of clean, prepped trays on hand is one of the small but important systems that keeps the whole operation running smoothly without last-minute scrambling. Filling trays with growing medium. The growing medium of choice here is a general-purpose potting mix, essentially a blend of peat moss, vermiculite, perlite, and a wetting agent to help with even moisture absorption. Rather than prepping trays on the fly, the farm batches this work once a week, prepping enough trays for the entire upcoming week's planting needs, plus roughly an extra 10% as a buffer in case of miscounts, damaged trays, or unexpected reorders. This batching principle shows up throughout the farm's operations. The philosophy is to front-load repetitive prep work, so that when it's actually time to perform a task like planting, the team can move quickly and focus entirely on that one task rather than juggling multiple types of prep at once. A stack of 10 trays, for example, might already be filled and sitting on a storage rack alongside a couple hundred others, all queued up and ready for the coming week's 2 planting days. The equipment that makes this batching possible is a compact potting machine, a piece of equipment the founder considers one of the best investments the farm has made. even at its current price point of roughly $10,000. The machine works by taking a compressed bale of potting mix, breaking it apart in a hopper, carrying it up a conveyor, and dispensing it down a chute. An empty tray slides underneath the chute, fills with soil, and then gets pulled under a scrape bar that levels off the excess. The filled trays are then stacked and ready to go. One particularly useful feature of this machine is that it's mounted on wheels, meaning it can be rolled outside along with a supply of empty trays. Filling trays outdoors, rather than inside the main growing space, is a deliberate choice. The dusty, messy, water-heavy parts of the operation are kept away from the cleaner indoor growing environment whenever possible. The seed storage and preparation. Just as trays are prepped in batches, so are the seeds. Near the front of the growing space, bulk seed storage takes up what would otherwise be a production or grow-out rack. It's a temporary arrangement. As the farm nears full capacity, that rack space will eventually need to be reassigned purely to growing crops, meaning bulk seed storage will need a new home. For smaller volume seeds, varieties that aren't planted in huge quantities, a more compact storage system is used. Each seed type is labeled with its crop code, full name, germination method, and sowing density per tray. As an example, a pound of lettuce seed, sown at a rate of about 10 grams per tray, will yield roughly 45 trays. Because that pound of seed can stretch across so many trays, the space required to store smaller volume seed varieties stays relatively minimal. Two seeders, two philosophies. The farm actually uses two different seeding machines, a compact tabletop seeder and a more robust unit from a robotics-focused seed equipment company. Each machine has its own strengths, weaknesses, and quirks, and part of using both comes down to the practical reality of working within the farm's specific space constraints and layout. There's an acknowledgement that different growers will have strong opinions about seeding equipment and methods. And that's expected, since so much of it comes down to individual farm configuration and preference. Weighing out seed by sowing density. Every crop grown on the farm has its own unique sowing density, the amount of seed by weight that goes into a single tray. Some crops need a heavy hand. Radish, for instance, might call for around 40 grams of seed per tray. Others need barely a fraction of that. Celery might only require about 4 grams per tray. To streamline this, seed for each of the roughly 25 different crop varieties grown on the farm is pre-weighed into individual pint containers, a simple, inexpensive storage solution. Rather than weighing seed out crop by crop every single planting day, the team weighs out a large batch of seed for each variety approximately once a month. Because the farm already knows its planting patterns, which crops move in high volume and which are more of a niche or specialty item, they can weigh out exactly the right number of pre-measured containers to last several weeks. A fun example of this in action: cantaloupe microgreens. The farm plants just one tray of cantaloupe every week, purely because the founder enjoys growing it, not because any customer has specifically ordered it. Since it's such low volume, the team keeps 5 pre-weighed pint containers of cantaloupe seed on hand at any time, which is enough to cover 5 weeks of planting before needing to weigh out more. When planting day arrives, the process is refreshingly simple. Check the crop planning software to see exactly how many trays of each variety need to be planted that day. Walk over to the seed storage area and grab the already weighed containers needed. Combined with the already prepped trays from earlier in the week, everything needed to plant is ready to go with zero last-minute prep work. Moving outside, the planting process. When it's time to actually plant, the team wheels out the racks, holding the prepped trays, grabs the pre-weighed seed containers, and heads outdoors. Folding tables come out of a storage shed, and the whole planting operation is set up right there in the open air. The farm storage shed has its own story. It has been broken into twice, a fact the founder mentions candidly. In hindsight, The shed wasn't secured particularly well when it was first purchased, nor was security tightened up much even after the first break-in. Since it's simply a basic prefabricated shed, there weren't many built-in security options. Eventually, the team drilled holes into the shed's structure and added two separate locks to better protect the equipment stored inside. What's inside the shed originally? The shed housed tray cleaning supplies, a utility cart, a hose, and a pressure washer, until all of it was stolen in a break-in. Thankfully, the loss was covered by insurance, and the farm has since added security cameras to the property. Today, the shed is used to store the folding tables used for planting, along with the week's supply of dirty, used trays that are waiting to be sanitized. Storing the dirty trays inside the shed, rather than leaving them out in the open, helps prevent them from being stolen while they wait for their turn to be cleaned. The shed also holds a snow shovel, spare gas for the pressure washer, and personal protective equipment for the farm's employees. Just like the earlier tray filling stage, planting itself typically happens outdoors on those folding tables, keeping the messier, wetter tasks away from the main indoor growing space. Germination. Where the magic begins once trays are planted, they're brought back inside and placed onto dedicated germination racks. The vast majority of the farm's crop varieties are what's known as stack germinated, meaning trays are stacked on top of one another, often with weighted pavers placed on top, to encourage strong, even root development before the trays are moved out into the light. To help keep things organized, especially for newer employees who haven't yet memorized every crop by sight, each variety on the germination rack is labeled with a small tag showing an abbreviation for the crop, along with a scannable QR code. Scanning that code pulls up reference photos, making it easy for anyone on the team to correctly identify a crop, even if they're unfamiliar with it. The crop planning software tracks germination timing for every variety, alerting the team exactly when a given batch is ready to come out of the germination stage. Once ready, trays are moved from the germination racks to their designated spot elsewhere on the farm. Every crop always goes to the same physical location on the farm each time. A simple but powerful organizational habit that means the team always knows exactly where to find any given crop, rather than having to search a different corner of the farm each week. A walk through the crops touring the growing racks reveals a wide variety of crops at different stages of maturity. Asterisk pea shoots. Young field pea sits above young tendril pea, with a batch of mature tendril pea just 1 day away from harvest. Asterisk nutrition mix components. Broccoli, cabbage, and kohlrabi make up a popular blended product. Purple cabbage, young broccoli, and kohlrabi can all be seen growing side by side. Asterisk specialty greens. Parsley at around 12 days sits near a batch at about 19 days, a notably slow-growing crop compared to most microgreens. Nearby dill, young lettuce, and shiso are also coming along. Asterisk additional specialty varieties. Fava, onion, young chervil, an even younger batch of shiso, fennel, and nasturtium round out the specialty section. Nasturtium is an interesting outlier. It takes about 5 days just to germinate, but needs only an additional 3 to 4 days after that to develop its signature broad, rounded leaf. Asterisk cantaloupe, a young small batch, the same low volume just for fun crop mentioned earlier. Asterisk cilantro, a larger production run with about 30 trays dedicated to a single wholesale customer. A younger cohort of the same crop grows nearby. Even with years of experience and a well-refined process, the team still occasionally deals with damping off disease in certain crops. A reminder that no farm, no matter how dialed in, is entirely immune to these common growing challenges. Asterisk basil. An entire section of the farm is dedicated to basil at multiple growth stages, staggered across 4 cohorts, one just 4 to 5 days into germination under humidity domes, one around 10 days old, one around 15 days old, and the oldest cohort at about 19 days old, just 2 days from harvest. This staggered planting approach, with multiple cohorts of the same crop at different ages growing simultaneously, is what allows the farm to maintain a steady, continuous supply for its customers rather than harvesting everything in one erratic burst followed by an empty gap. Harvest day, when it's time to harvest, the team doesn't carry trays one at a time across the farm's roughly 75-foot length. Instead, they use a multi-shelf harvest rack, a method borrowed from another microgreens grower, built from a standard wheeled rack with a few extra shelves added on. This rack gets wheeled around the farm, collecting as many trays as possible for whatever crop is being harvested that day. Once loaded up, the rack is brought to a dedicated harvest table. From there, harvesting is refreshingly low-tech. A simple chef's knife is used to cut each crop by hand. Depending on the order, harvested greens go straight into a clamshell container for a single variety product, or into a larger harvest tote if the greens are destined for a blended mix. Every harvested batch gets labeled with a lot tag for traceability, then moves into one of several dedicated refrigerators. The farm uses different fridges for different customers and different delivery routes across the city, keeping the whole packing and delivery process organized. After the cutting is done, the leftover growing medium and root mat waste get loaded onto a dolly and wheeled out to the farm's compost bin, closing the loop on the growing medium. The now empty, dirty trays are moved to the shed, where they wait until the one dedicated day each week when the team runs a full round of tray cleaning and sanitizing. By the numbers, a high-level snapshot pulling back to look at the whole operation, a few key numbers stand out. Asterisk, 8 rack systems make up the total growing infrastructure. Asterisk, about 400 trays move through the farm every single week. Asterisk, roughly 50 to 60 customers, made up primarily of restaurants, along with large wholesale accounts, a small number of retail shops, and a local farmers market. The farm has also sold to schools in the past, showing some flexibility in its customer base beyond the usual restaurant and wholesale channels. The food safety and certification: this isn't a casual backyard operation. The farm holds Good Agricultural Practices certification, harmonized with USDA standards for food safety. That certification requires rigorous record-keeping and periodic audits to confirm the farm is meeting food safety standards expected of a commercial produce operation. Future content plans include a deeper dive into exactly how the farm handles its food safety record-keeping, potentially even documenting a real audit from start to finish so other growers can see exactly what that process looks like in practice. A What Comes Next This tour represents just a high-level overview of how the farm operates from tray prep all the way through to harvest and delivery. Future installments are expected to break down each individual stage in much greater depth. From the finer details of tray prepping and planting technique to germination management, grow-out care, harvesting methods, tray sanitation, composting practices, and the delivery logistics that get these greens from the farm to dozens of restaurant kitchens and retail shelves each week. There's also talk of a tour covering the delivery van itself, which has been custom modified to better support both restaurant deliveries and farmers market setup. Closing thoughts: what stands out most about this operation isn't just the volume of product moving through it each week, but how much of that output comes down to smart systems. Batching repetitive tasks, pre-weighing seed, keeping consistent physical layouts for crops, and using simple but effective tools like QR-coded ID tags and multi-shelf harvest carts. None of these are complicated innovations on their own, but together, they're what allow a two-person team to reliably produce 400 trays a week without the operation collapsing into chaos. For anyone running or building toward their own microgreens farm, the biggest takeaway may be less about any single piece of equipment and more about the underlying philosophy. Prep in batches, standardize your layout, track everything, and design your workflow so that on any given day, the team can focus on doing one job well instead of juggling 5 half-finished tasks at once. Here's a 200-word script. Hey, everyone. Today we took a look at how a small two-person team is producing 400 trays of microgreens every single week, supplying 50 restaurants, wholesalers, and a farmer's market. From prepping trays and weighing seeds to planting, germination, and finally harvesting, every step is batched and organized systematically to keep the whole operation running smoothly and efficiently. This wasn't just a farm tour. It's a complete system that shows how, with the right planning, the right tools, and consistent execution, even a small team can operate at serious scale. In upcoming videos, we'll break down every step in much more detail: planting techniques, germination management, harvesting methods, and even the delivery process that gets these greens from farm to table. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit subscribe and tap that bell icon, because starting today, this channel will be uploading 3 new videos every week. Everything about farming, business, and growth will be dropping right here first. See you in the next video. Until then, take care.